The condition is really crazy condition.
I mean, that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Maciek giving Antoine Albo a run for his money. Here we go. What a finish.
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder.
Welcome to the Windsurfing Podcast, back again for episode 45. And this week we have an absolute legend of the sport. He actually started up in swimming before moving to windsurfing, but more specifically, speed sailing. He was the first man to break the 30-knot barrier. That was in Weymouth, yes. We're going to talk to him about, obviously that. We're going to talk about his biggest crashes. We're going to talk to him about big wave sailing and that memorable day at Hookeeper. We're going to talk to him about sailing with Laird Hamilton. And we're also going to talk to him about the current state of windsurfing and where he thinks he's at. You got it yet? If you haven't, I'm going to give you one last clue. I went so fast, all my hair blew off. Yes, it is, of course, the legend that is Fred Haywood.
Fred, how you doing? Thank you so much for joining us with your beautiful, your nice natural backdrop as opposed to mine.
Yeah, it's Monday morning. You're coming from the beach and I'm sitting on the mountainside. This is Mount Haleakala in Maui. It's 10,000 feet and I live at about 2,500 feet.
Not too bad. Keeps you fit as well, right?
Yeah, I have to do yard work and run around my yard, but keeping fit is more important now than ever.
Yeah, and as well as the distance that we're recording this at, there's also another gap of, I'd say, eras of windsurfing. So I'm really hoping for a good little stroll down memory lane, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was selling real estate at, when I first met windsurfing. I was about to buy a Prindle cat. Kind of like sister of the Hobie cat, the twin hull boats, because guys were sailing them off of Kaanapali. When one morning I was living on Kaanapali Beach in a condominium, and I looked up and I saw two guys sail around the point and come into the beach, and I'd never seen a windsurfer before. I ran down there and it was Mike Waltz and a friend. Could have been Matt Schweitzer, but they had sailed 6 miles down the coast to come to work on the beach in a windsurfing school they started. Maybe it was Ken Clyde. But anyway, I ran up to the beach and I just went, wow, what is this? And he said, it's a windsurfer. And I said, well, I'm interested in sailing, but how are you going to get home? And he said, we're just going to sail home. I said, you just sailed 6 miles across the wind and now you're going to sail 6 miles back? And he says, yeah. Mike says, yeah, that's what we're going to do. And I said, I'm in. I'm in.
Didn't take much convincing, did you?
No. And I went down the beach, I think the next day, and I just grabbed a sail and a board and pushed it out into the water and thought, heck, I think I can just do this. And Mike came down and stopped me and screamed at me and said, hey, this is a rental and we just don't take them out with people. And, you have to have a lesson. Anyway, that's kind of how Mike and I met. We ended up starting Sailboards Maui together within a year or two. But it's kind of funny because over the course of a couple of weeks, I started to get it, and there's a couple girls down there that were really excited about it, and they were sailing very fast. And so I just, okay, this is what we got to do. We got to go faster and faster. And my thinking was, God, I didn't know what was happening. But at the same time, the real estate market was crashing within a couple months. Our local interest rates, which are very low right now, that you can buy a house for 2.75% interest here on Maui, and next week all you have to do is have a good FICO score, and you can get 80% financing on real estate, just on a FICO score. That's what's coming next week. The lenders are really opening it up. But back then, the interest rates were around 8% in 1980. And overnight, it changed to 19%. Now, imagine what your interest rates are at home, and they're very low. Imagine 19% interest and how that's going to affect your real estate.
Yeah, sure.
So it kind of crashed everything. And I said, I'm going to just start windsurfing all the time and not worry about real estate. So I sold all my property and I just started going to the beach all the time. And I am so hooked, like everybody gets hooked on the sport. Now it's foiling, it's winging, kiting. There's so many sports coming out. But I think the real infancy was the start of the windsurfer to harness the wind. And it's capitalized on all this future that happened since over the 20, 30, 40 years.
And you were kind of a late starter, right? You already got your degree. Actually, you didn't even mention I see you're pretty modest. You didn't mention you were like the number one swimmer in the country for high schools. And then, went to Stanford University, got an amazing education. And before that day where you saw Mike Waltz, you were already like, pretty, late 20s, right? So,
okay, here's what happened. I'm swimming in a prep school on the Big Island, which is Hawaii, and we didn't have a swimming pool. So we were using someone else's pool, and then the coach built a raft shaped like a swimming pool with 2 telephone poles running on each side of it and a raft connected. And we were swimming between it with no goggles in the ocean. And it was moored in the harbor. That was my swimming pool. And I happened to go on a tour across the U.S. with 15 other swimmers from Hawaii, and $99, things were cheaper then, $99 round trip as long as you kept on going the same direction. You could take a Greyhound bus up to 2 months. So we all were on this Greyhound bus, and we would just stop at Greyhound stations and get off and swim with different people and stay in their houses and then get back on the bus and move on. And I was 15, and I went with my brother Bill, and he was 11. But in the first pool that we stopped at was Foothill, California, and there was a swimming meet going on, and I was so blown away at how good the swimmers were. The girls were faster than me. I was only training 3 months a year, and I got a tap on my shoulder while I was sitting there watching racing, and I look over my shoulder, and this guy says, "What's your name?" And I said, "Fred Haywood." He goes, "Well, I'm Mark Spitz, and I just wanted to meet someone from Hawaii because I was there for 2 weeks when I was first born." And now you don't know who Mark Spitz is, but in 1972, he set 7 world records with 7 events in the Olympics.
Yeah, like the Michael Phelps of.
He was the Michael Phelps of the 70s, and this was 66. And I watched him swim in that meet, and basically I came back to school in my wooden pool raft in the ocean and told my coach about it. I said, there's this kid that's going to beat everybody in the world. It's just amazing. What an amazing trip I had. And I met him, and he was cool. My coach says, Well, Fred, if you stay here and get straight A's in school your senior year, you won't go to as good of a college unless you move to California right now and go swim with Mark Spitz. And I said, would you help me do that? And he wrote a letter to the coach. The next year I was swimming with Mark Spitz and talented swimmers. Now, I had only trained 3 months a year. So any swimmers that are out there listening, they started 10 years before me and had been training all year round double workouts. And I only had done a few double workouts. So I was so far out of shape when I first got over there. The high school season started, and I'm doing repeats one day in workout against Mark Spitz in the pool. And I could tell how well I was doing by the size of the bubbles, because I was always behind him. And if I was closer, the bubbles were bigger, and they got smaller the further back I was. And they were all pretty small bubbles, 20 in a row with 15 seconds, 10 seconds rest. And I decided I'd flip over and swim backstroke. Well, on the other side of the lane was Mitch Ivey, who was the number one backstroker in America. And of course, Spitz was number one freestyler now in high school. But this guy, Mitch, was swimming next to me, and I swam 10 against him with 10 seconds rest. We were exhausted doing repeats because that was some of the first high interval training that is prevalent now. That was being administered to the teams, and Santa Clara was really progressive on that. And after the 30th repeat, 10 backstroke with Mitch, he looks over the lane at me and he says, Fred, you have the ugliest backstroke I've ever seen in my life. You're bobbing and weaving and hitting the lane lines. And I'll tell you, my anger came up, and I clenched my fist underwater. I could reach him. So I just took a deep breath and went underwater and screamed and let all the air out and just relaxed for a second, came back up and said, Mitch, you have the prettiest backstroke I've ever seen in my life. What do I have to do to look like you? And he says, oh. He changed his whole demeanor. And he says, get out the pool, I'll show you something. And he handed me a towel, and he says, now hold it over your head. He wadded up a little towel, and he hold it up over your head and throw it down at the pool deck like you're swimming. So I threw it down, and I was swimming with a straight arm. I thought that's the way you swam fast. But he says, it landed 6 feet away from my feet. And so I took that towel, and he says, you have to make it land by your baby toe to swim backstroke. And in order to do that, you've got to rotate your shoulders over your nose on both sides and put your arm way over the head. And at the same time, under the water, you drop your elbow behind your back and hit your hip if you can. Keep it real tight. Within a couple minutes, we had 5-minute break. Within a couple minutes, I was throwing it next to my baby toe, and I jumped back in the pool and beat him 10 in a row. Of course, he called me an MF something. So I chose not to write any swear words in my book that went on. But, as windsurfers, we are all wild and crazy and swearing and screaming, and swimmers too. They're just like everybody else.
The level of detail you remember all these stories is uncanny. It's
It was so moving. It was so moving because I just swam 10 backstrokes in front of the best guy in the nation in high school, and I just learned a stroke. Well, what was amazing is the coach says, oh, you're not swimming freestyle anymore. You're going to go swim the 100 back against Mitch in this dual meet this weekend. I said, well, what should I do? I said, I don't know what to do. My coach says, well, just take it out long and bring it back mean. And I swam 100 back in the very next high school meet and set the national high school record, swimming 3.5 seconds faster than I did the week before. So all of a sudden the coach says, I'm going to take you to the nationals, but I was only going to take Spitz. But God, you might do something. You're ranked 9th now in the nation. And I'm going to take you as well as Mark Spitz. And I said, well, where's the nationals and what is it? He says, it's against everybody in the nation. It's in Dallas, Texas, blah, blah, blah. Well, it was going to be in 2 weeks. That next weekend, Mark Spitz invited me to his home for dinner. We were doing carpool to work out, so we were pretty good friends by then. And I was just there alone with him and his mom and dad and 2 sisters and talking story. And Mark and his dad talked about winning 6 events at the Nationals. He's 16, I'm 17. We could only enter 3 events. So basically the conversation was which ones wouldn't tire him out, because he had a choice of 6. And I said, boy, I wonder if my friends would think if they heard this conversation that I'm having with this guy that is my idol, right? And I had come over to swim with Mark. And here I'm sitting in here, hearing him talk about winning all these events. I was kind of blown away. Well, Mr. Spitz asked me 3 times in a row what I was going to swim and how I was going to do. And on the 3rd one, he said, because he just kept on saying he didn't understand. I don't know what you mean, Fred. I kept on telling him that I was going to swim and get a 3rd place. But I was 70th in the nation the week before. And now I had just come to 9th with the last swim because high schoolers were a little slower than college. Anyway, I said, maybe if I swim a half a second faster, I'm going to get a 3rd place. And I thought I was boasting. And he looked across the table at me and he says, Fred, there is only one person in the pool everyone's going to remember. And 2nd through 6 are all losers. Don't you ever forget it. And I just went, I slumped down in my chair. I went, holy frick, this guy's so aggressive. And I hardly knew him. And he's yelling at me. But he was telling me something that I had to deal with. He just gave me a mental tip about accepting excellence, right? Or winning. I always thought if I got a B- in school, that was a good grade. I could do a lot of surfing and go get my B-, and I didn't have to spend another 5 hours studying every night, for the A. So I went down to the Nationals that next week, and I actually won and went 1.5 seconds faster and kind of blew everybody up. My teammates were sitting on the side of the pool, and the collegiate champion who had just won the week before, I beat him, and he screams at me and says, what's your name? Because he asked me who I was. And I said, my name is Fred Haywood. And he goes, Fred who? And my teammates caught on to that. So I was called Fred Who for a while. It's all in my book. During COVID, I wrote a book with the ghostwriter off of a lot of interviews I did because I always wanted to write a book about this event with Mark Spitz. I didn't know my life would go further into windsurfing and real estate. The book is just primarily, it starts out on the beaches in Maui and Kahului with no tourists and just us kids hanging around with all the local guys and other haoles we call white people on Maui. And, dealing with my dad got us all balsa wood surfboards, with those big fins. I'm going to post some pictures of big fins hanging out of our car when I was 14, probably next week. But anyway, we were surfing all the spots, Malaya, Honolua, Hokipa, Pakakalo, and enjoying our lives. But we had no idea what was coming. But that's how I started it. And then it got progressively into swimming. And then I came back and I started real estate in the 70s. So I could go surf in Grajagan, G-Land. I had read a letter from the guy who discovered it and walked down the beach. And I was going, oh my God. He's been walking for hours, and every time he goes surfing, it's getting bigger and better, and he's getting tubed in every single wave. I said, I want to go there. And I was working construction at the time, and I saw a guy sell a piece of real estate right below me, and I said, how much was that one worth? I was grouting a 3-story block wall, holding on rebar with a cement hose and a friend holding it on the wall. No lines, no safety lines, just backpedaling surfer. I could hold that hose. How much was that one worth? He goes, $1,800. And he had only been 10 minutes in the apartment. I went, $1,800. I'm making $5.15 an hour working hard-ass construction in the heat of Lahaina, busting our asses. I went to my real estate office friend that afternoon after work and said, how do I get into real estate? He said, there's a class tomorrow. Just go to it. It started a week ago. And just tell them that you'll catch up and you want in. I go to this class the next morning. There's 13 people in it. That's all. And I said, I want to get into real estate now. Here's my money. And can I just catch up? And they said, sure. Anyway, I got my license. 6 months later, I was surfing in G-Land on a boat with a catamaran. We stayed 9 days. It started 3 to 4 feet the first day. The next day it was 5 to 7. The next day it was 6 to 8, bigger, for 9 days in a row. Last day we were so surfed out that the rest of the group went into shore. But I just looked at the waves and said, I think these are the best waves I've seen the whole trip. I'm going surfing. And I surfed for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 3 hours in G-Land by myself at Money Trees. And I kept on paddling deeper and deeper and getting tube ride after tube ride. And one of which I stood up in the tube halfway up the face with my hands straight up, and I was barreled way deep in the tube and came out with my hands up. And I just went, oh my God, I just had the best 5 waves of my life in a row, and nobody's out here with me. I went, this is another dream come true, If you can imagine it and dream it and put your energies to getting it, that's what I want people to get in my book. Because you learn through...
Let's plug it quickly. The book is called Racing with Aloha, and it comes out August 24th. It's available on pre-order right now. So
yeah, and you can go online, racingwithaloha.com, and put in your email and it'll send you the first 10 pages with Laird Hamilton's foreword. Of course, Laird and I did some extreme sailing on Kauai. We sailed at tunnels.
Yes.
Yeah, tunnels was maybe 20 plus feet, 25 feet, 30. I don't even know what we went on a coast run outside tunnels when it was blowing 50. With 30 foot seas, 35 foot wind swell seas. Just insanely breaking everywhere. And of course, Laird's jumping, going 30 feet over a 20-foot swell. And I'm going, okay, Laird, tone it down because we're 3 miles offshore now. Current's running 5 knots. It's blowing 50. The beach break is 20 feet. If you break down, I don't want to have to swim in, pull you in, or even find you. I could be 20 feet away from Laird and not see him because of giant swell. He's on one side, I'm on the other side. If he breaks down, I just go right by, and I don't know what happened. So we come down to I was on a 5.2 and he was on a 5.8, 5.8 meter in 50 knots.
A little overpowered, I guess.
A little overpowered. I was a little overpowered. I would I would be on the swells, and it was a running swell and a cross swell with waves coming in, but we were offshore, so it was mostly the swell of the wind. And so I'd be on the top of a wave going beam reach, and then I'd turn down and broad reach right down the face, and then and sheet in all the way and put my clue behind my butt and be riding down the face, kind of like, pull a sail all the way in and totally depowered, but using the gravity of the wind swell just to move as far down as I could without having to sail in the weather, right? Because if you're sailing beam, you're in full power. If you turned 180 degrees downwind, there's no wind, especially if there's a wave and you're just this little speck going down the wave. And then pretty soon the wave would kind of catch you because you're not going that fast. And as soon as I get back up to the top, I'd have to go to the beam again and open my sail up and wait for the next wave to come. And then I'd do the same thing. And so
speed wave riding, wasn't it?
I was surviving coast run riding. I've never done it that way, but it helped. Anyway, we got down through that, and we went by this break called Kings outside Honolulu Bay. It was 60 feet, and it was so big that the chop on it was 6 feet. And I said, okay, and we were kind of off the wind trying to go by it, and you're just kind of feathering to get through the channel to get into the bay, and here's a 60-foot wave, and I said, I'm not going to ride that thing because I couldn't handle the pounding going down the face. But anyway.
But you did get a couple of people mentioned to me like a super famous poster with you like basically riding the biggest wave ever. That's what it was called. It was not called a 50-footer. It was not called whatever, it was not called anything by size or... Yeah. It's just the biggest wave ever. So how was that? What was that about?
It's not the biggest wave ever, but, publicity dramatizes things. Okay, dream big, follow your passions, and sheet in, right? You just, hey, okay, we're going to go do this. Let's do it. But anyway, here's what happened. I'm driving down Hana Highway toward Hokipa, and I see Arnaud de Ronay in his, I think it was some kind of open air car. And he has this, he'd wear his shawl or whatever around. And he goes, Fred, and we actually stopped on the highway because there were no cars. 1984. This was 3 months after I'd just broken the world record on a speedboard. I'm going to Hokipa, just checking it out. It's early in the morning. And Arnaud says, the biggest waves in the world are coming today at Hokipa. And I got a helicopter coming at noon. You be there and we'll get some photography and it's going to be great. And I've already hired the helicopter. And I said, oh, yeah, I know. I've been sailing the last 5 days there, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be probably 20, 30 plus feet. So I know the tides are no, and I'm going to be there at 4:30. He goes, what? Come at noon. I already hired the helicopter. I got the camera. I got everything set up. We're going to make history. I go, yeah, but I'm just going out to ride the biggest wave I ever saw. I know it's going to come at 4:30 because every day the tide changes about 1 hour. And for the last five days, it started at 11:30, 12:30, 1:30, 2:30, 3. It's been about 4:30, 4:30. I'll be sailing, but I'll probably come up at 3 or 3:30. No, you have to come at noon because that's when the helicopter's coming. I said, that's okay. I'm only going to ride one wave. I don't care. I wasn't looking for a photo op. I just realized that the windsurfer is going to ride the biggest wave, and I wanted to be the one that does it first, right? I want to go to G-Land. I want to go swim with Mark Spitz. I've had all these things that I dreamt and then put the effort in moving forward with it. I show up at the beach at 3:00. Hokipa's, if you drove down into the parking area, you could not see the sailors outside. You had to be up on the top where the cars were going by, and you could just see them once in a while. And I can remember seeing Malta Simmer doing some top turns on just a gigantic wave. It was a little speck, going. I could only see the top part of the wave, and then there were 5 guys out. I think Craig Masonville, David Ezzy, Mike Eskimo, Brian Karlstrom, and I think Eskimo almost died. He got pushed all the way down the coast, and everybody was terrorized. Well, I rig up, and it takes me 3 or 4 tries to get through the break because I have to go through 30+ foot faces, and I'm not even
really closing out everything. Yeah.
I was barging. I wasn't planing. I always say, if you're not planing, you're complaining. Well, tell me about facing a feathering wave, and you're down here, and it's feathering, and you've got to. I could count to 5 before I got up to the top of the wave, and then I'd free fall off the back because I didn't have enough to plane on, so I couldn't, just kind of sail back down. It was just free falling. Boom! Finally got over 2 or 3, and I was out. And I'm looking around, and nobody's there. The helicopter's gone because the helicopter was overhead at 3 o'clock when I got there, but now it's about 4 o'clock. So I'm going back and forth. The only time I could plane is when a set of waves came. So, there's a compression of wind that accelerates between the waves. So I could get on the plane and go over all the sets and then turn on the last one and sail it back in toward the beach. But it wasn't big enough. And I'd sail back out and wait for the compression, and I could plane out. And I was on a 5.9 with a 17 LOA math, length overall. So, and that's a big sail for sailing waves. But it was late in the day, and now the wind's turning offshore more. So actually, when you're coming back to shore, you're being headed, and I had to bear off a bit to get on the wave. And then once I got on it, I could turn back upwind. Anyway, at about 4:30, 4:45, I look up, I'm coming out, and I see a stack of waves coming. And there's one that's just like the mother lode wave in the background. And I'm 1.5 miles offshore and maybe 2 miles. I don't know. I turn around well before it because it's traveling faster than I could plane until I could get on it. And then I got on it and I sailed through it. And I tried to get down the face straight down, but the wind was so strong I had to bear off and broad reach down the face. And then I pulled in straight when I hit the flat and came up. And the wave in front of it had a 20-foot back on it. And I'm in between the trough now, and I run out of wind. And so if you look at my big wave picture, that mast is not raked back too much. It's standing up because I was out of wind. Now I'm trying to sail in front of this thing that's doing this, but I'm doing this. Yeah. I'm not sailing forward. I'm coming backwards because I'm going at about 3 or 4 knots, 5 knots. I don't know. I wasn't running 20 knots now. I've lost my wind. I'm feathering my sail, and I don't know if that wave's going to come and land on my head, in front of me, in back of me. All of a sudden it landed right in back of me. It blew up. I started to let go, and I can remember my booms going to my fingertips because I thought it was over. And then I went like this. Oh my God, it's not over. It was a whiteout. I couldn't see anything because the wave was crashing over me. And all of a sudden I felt a little bit of wind and popped right out and sailed up to the beach. And there was nobody on the beach. Everybody had gone because the sailors had gone, and they didn't know I was going out. But off in the corner, I catch this guy running from pavilion side up the hill, and he's coming down all the way down to the beach. I had sailed all the way up to the bank at Ho'okipa. I don't know if you've sailed Ho'okipa.
Yeah.
But there's a drop off, then the beach starts, and usually you launch down here where the waves are. This wave came all the way up and left me sitting right in front of the bank. And I just took a few steps, and Arnaud's running down the beach with his camera banging on his chest. He goes, Fred, Fred, I just got a whole roll of film, not digitized, a whole roll of film on the biggest wave in the world. This is going to make you more famous than your world record speed sailing. And I said, oh, that's great. Whatever. That's cool. And then he mixed up his pictures. He had 20 pictures or so, and he mixed them up, and he wrote all the magazine. He says, I'll guarantee you 8 of the biggest wave shots exclusively yours. And he sold it over and over. But he just switched the pictures, Okay, I got 7 with that, and I'll give him the big one. And then I mixed this one up. So all the magazines got pretty much the same pictures, but maybe 1 or 2 missing.
Still exclusive, though, kind of.
Exclusive. And I learned something about marketing from Arnaud.
Yeah.
He was a master marketer. He was an incredible guy because he had the same kind of dream plan that I had. If you can dream it, you can do it. And, he had a sophisticated sailboard that could distill salt water and give him fresh water. He had solar panels. He had a hook off for a kite. He had pontoons on the side of it that he could blow up and be able to sleep. And he could hang a kite out. And, he had a book deal with some publisher to write about sailing all the channels in the world. And of course, he sailed the Bering Strait, which is quite an accomplishment in the freezing waters.
Yeah.
On his sail was a sickle of the Russian and an American flag crossed over, so he would be sailing. And he said when they picked him up, he drank vodka with them all, and they all partied, and it wasn't any big deal. But it was his adventure that he thought he could sail to Hawaii from Tahiti. And Malta Simmer was down there training with him. And one day he took off, but he realized the wind wasn't right. So they came back, and the boat couldn't keep up anyway. A sailboat and a windsurfer. So he came back to Tahiti, and the French authorities ground him and said, you cannot do this. It's irrational. It's crazy. You cannot leave and try this again. Well, the next day, I guess, in the morning, he took off by himself. And he actually went with the wind because 11 days later, launching from Tahiti, he landed on the island of Ahi. And he told me that he was so spun out, because lack of food. He was eating flying fish and some compressed food that he had. And he said he had a Swiss Army knife and he was poking sharks, trying to bite his floats. And he had his kite up and he came crashing through the surf and was exhausted. And some native found him on the beach and nursed him back to life. And when he came back to Maui, he really literally had sores on his elbows from laying back, and his hands were all shredded. And his face was just sunburned and peeling. He was just horrible looking. I could imagine a few days before. But Arnaud was an innovator and an inspiration and a broad thinker. And I admired him for all of that because I was chasing big dreams too. And I think in life, everybody wants to chase their dreams, but a lot of people are afraid, Okay, I will swear, I've got a funny one. I said, why don't you just put those fears in that big back pocket of yours called the fuck it pocket? Stick those fears in your fuck it pocket and let's move forward and go sail, go do that speed run. Let's go improve our equipment and let's get it going. Or let's go to the better college. Let's make our relationship better. Let's make our fun better. Fuck it. put it in your back pocket, all those fears, and charge forward. Because once you put it in your back pocket, it's not such a big deal.
I love that.
I mean, I had to get screamed at by Mr. Spitz to put things that I felt I was incapable of in my back pocket too, right? And all of a sudden I was given permission to win from that conversation. And I was given a stroke instruction. Now, remember, when Mitch Ivey talked to me about swimming, he was really insulting me. Said I had the worst stroke he's ever seen. And I went underwater and screamed, clenched my fist, shook it out. And then I said, Mitch, you have the prettiest stroke I ever saw. What do I have to do to look like you? Well, my point is that you need to stay out of your judgment with everything. Just stay out of judgment. Don't respond when you're angry. When you get emotional, chill out and think and get back into curiosity. So if someone's criticizing you, ask them what they think that you should do to improve, because there is opportunity that surrounds adversity, and everybody should listen to that very carefully, because there's so much criticism. Like we had a president for 4 years that was critiquing everything in not a very pleasant way. And then the dark web came and the conspiracy. Wake up. We're all just humans, and we need to get into curiosity and make this life better. Don't drive it down the rabbit hole of fear. I have friends that won't get COVID vaccinations because their beliefs, or conspiracies. I don't know.
But I agree with you that a lot of it comes from fear, and it's not. Once you really decipher it, you realize that the very base of those actions is fear. So the fuck with bucket is a great.
And I mean that it because it rhymes, the fuck it pocket, and it makes fun of the fear or whatever you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But
and I think once you have that in that moment, once you tell yourself like fuck it pocket, it's like you're actually gonna smile, like you're gonna be scared shitless, and then you're gonna actually like
do it. Get over it.
Yeah,
because everybody's got their fears, and and then furthermore about the conspiracy theories and the dark web, there is AI now. AI, and we all know AI is once you go search windsurf boards on the internet, all of a sudden you're getting these ads for these companies, or you go search anything you search, all of a sudden you get ads for.
Even I hate to tell you, but even when you talk and your phone is lying around, you'll get the ads too.
Yeah. So now imagine if you're going down the rabbit hole of being afraid, what you're getting on the internet. So the problem is we're not getting our news from reputable sources. We're getting it from conspiracy and sources of darkness. And if that inundates your platform, I can understand how deep you're going to go in the rabbit hole, and that you should start to look at this and listen to your friends that are saying things differently, because it's going to permeate if you let it. And unfortunately, we've got to get through this and figure out how to get everybody back on track. Because it's kind of like them and us. Oh, you're one of those. Oh, no, I don't really align to anybody.
Yeah, and there's no dialogue, right, between one and the other. Like it's almost like two separate worlds. We just happen to live on the same planet, but we don't even, because you just kept getting fed the same, like more and more of the same, as you say, And
what's your news source? Well, it's AI. Well, you're going to get what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And be right. But, here we have an opportunity to get away with all of it. by going windsurfing, by going swimming, by going surfing, all these water sports, kiting, foiling, big wave riding, small wave riding. You could ride the smallest wave and have the best stoke. It doesn't matter, because if we just work on the stoke all the time and not the conspiracies and not the worries, once we're out in the water, right, you know it, everything goes away, because you're watching that wave coming. You're watching the chop on 50 feet and a quarter mile ahead of you, and the downwind where the groove is for making a nice turn so you can get back to shore. And you're so focused on the now, there is no worry, because the now doesn't have worry. And the only thing important is you and I right now and what we're talking about. And it's good. There's no worry when in the now, and all these water sports and other sports put you in the now and get you to share those endorphins with your friends so you can relate. Remember the time we went out and you had that crazy crash and I went over the falls and you know. We even went wind fishing, and Gary says, some of the best times was wind fishing with you, Fred. And I said, Gary, remember the time you held up a big ulua, about a 20-pounder, and showing me, and then all of a sudden you went up and over the falls? That was so funny. Yeah. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're just sharing the stoke with your friends, that's what matters. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how good looking you are. I don't care anything, but how are you responding to the elements and the people around you? Are you happy and bringing light and stoke, or are you depressed and whining and finding someone else that agrees with you so you can be a sympathy queen and walk around the world and look for negativity to cry about?
That's probably some of the best and kind of most on point words we've heard on this podcast, and we've had a million episodes by now. So that's great. And I hate to bring it back to more, let's say, surface, shallower waters, but we gotta talk about windsurfing. And one thing that strikes me with you said you set all these big goals, big dreams, and waves and G-land, and you're a Maui guy. So these days, especially, speed sailing is really the hub of speed sailing is in Europe. It's flat waters. It's the adrenaline for the people that can't reach waves. It's kind of, maybe the afterlife for some of the pros and whatever, But you decided, okay, I'm not gonna chase the world tour with wave sailing or racing or whatever. I'm gonna do speed.
Yeah, because one day at Sailboards Maui that we started in Kahului with Mike Waltz and Bill Arno and Mike were having kind of a heated discussion about speed and wave sailing. And Mike said, I know all you want to do is speed and that's such a small part of the sport. And then Arno answered, well, Mike, you just play like a clown in the waves and you think that is great, but speed is the center of the universe because you can define it. You can define it with time, and it is the reality and the strength of the sport. I like both of their answers. I like playing like a clown in the waves, and then I like to go fast. I went to my first speed trials, the Schweitzer speed trials in Malaya, after Jaap van der Res had broken the world record, and there were 20 players. Well, on the way to the contest, the boards blew off the car and I broke all my fins. So that took me out for the first day. And the second day I borrowed a board and I managed to get one run, and I was 18th place. A year later, we're at Sailboards Maui, and Pascal Maka had broken the world speed record in Weymouth, England. on Jimmy Lewis board. And surprisingly, that board was a flawed board because Jimmy rolled his planer on the bottom of the board while he was shaping it, and he put a gouge right in the belly of the board. And I remember him saying, "Hey, Fred, I just put a gouge here, and what the hell? They put some concaves in boards. Let's just make a concave." I said, "That sounds great, Jimmy. Just make a concave." Pascal had come and bought that board and taken it to Weymouth, England. Are you still there?
Concaves,
Okay.
yeah, still here, yeah.
Sorry.
The
So
invention of concaves.
He took his concave to Weymouth, England, and he broke the world speed record. And we had a picture of it, so we used it in an advertisement because we didn't have any money. We were just having fun. And he came into our shop one day and he says, "Fred, you used my picture and you didn't ask or pay me anything." I said, "Nah, we don't have any money, Arno. Maybe we can give you a discount on board." And he did buy another board at a discount. I said, "That's the best we can do. We don't have any money. We don't make money in this office." And I was kind of joking with him. I said, "Hey, Arno, don't worry about it." I mean, not Arno. I said, "Hey, Pascal, next year I'll just come to Weymouth and beat you and take your record from you." He laughed and I laughed. I went down to Ho'okipa the next day with my speed boards and started sailing from Ho'okipa to Kanaha every day. Sometimes hitchhiking back up to Ho'okipa because, you needed a ride. So I just de-rigged, put my boards at Kanaha and then my sail and stand there until someone was coming up to Haiku and get a ride back to Ho'okipa again. So I literally took it on and sailed and sailed and sailed and sailed until I figured it out. But, the innovation has changed so much now. That's the technology and the foils of the fins, the placement of the boards, all the size of the boards, the thickness, the rail designs, and the real curve underneath the board. Jimmy Lewis was the master of that in the 80s when we were all sailing. So he had the fastest boards generally. And of course, a few other people did too. But Jimmy predominantly dominated the speed boards. And I had made my concave 8, I think it was 8.6 and pintail, designed after a Waimea gun, but a little shorter. And I took off for Europe the next year and went to Brest, France. And I got there a couple weeks early to practice, but there was no wind until the event.
Of waves.
I was like, okay, we're sitting in here for 2 weeks in Europe. Nothing's happening. Finally, the contest happens and it never really blows. And I couldn't get my 8.6 pintail thin board to get going out of the water. And I was now using the wing mast. And the wing mast was a pre-preg carbon fiber mast cooked in an oven that had a track on the back and it was teardrop shaped. So I could rotate it and the foil of the sail come on the back. But I couldn't get it going, and I got last place. So my first 2 speed contests, okay, if you want to stay in judgment, you can just quit now. And I got 18th out of 20 down in Maui, and I got 315 out of 315 because I was the only one in the contest that didn't make a run. And then I took off for Weymouth and got to Weymouth, and all of a sudden I got up on the board and started riding it, and that wing mast was insane. It would accelerate at the high end. It wouldn't tweak out or anything. It wanted to go faster. It was the only thing I could ever imagine that I had ever ridden that wanted to burst more speed out of it.
So that was 3 cams, right? So basically, you could get
3 cams. It didn't
have that. Like
the Gasper team made the camber inducer,
right?
And the camber inducer was a big revolution. It was also very expensive to build these wing masts, and it wasn't a product. Actually, I decided that Well, it was more important to make money. And if I put my name on the RAF speed sale and got a percentage of everyone sold, I'd do better. And then worry about breaking the world record. Because once you break a world record, once you're at the top, it's no big deal to re-achieve it. It's a big deal to have the journey to get up there. This is the excitement. Once you're there, the journey to do it again is more level. There's not as much stoke. I mean, yeah, it's stoked to go faster. But I remember when Pascal got the world record back when he beat Crossbow, whatever. I was in 4th place, but I was using a 4.3 RAF wave. And I got
commercial reasons, let's say, yeah?
Yeah. And I didn't have the backing to do the wing mass. But you know, everybody's talking about the technology being so advanced on the sails and rigging and everything. But I still kind of think that if you put a hard surface on the leading edge of your mast, I mean, in your mast, and it was like a wing mast, like what I had, that you go to those places that they're doing those speed runs with a wing mast, and I think you would feel something more dramatic than you do on anything built out of cloth or plastic, because that's a hard surface. And in Weymouth, when I broke the world record, and I had sailed 30 runs at close to 30 knots. And the next day it blew stronger, but it only was for a little while. And I had my smaller sail rigged on a wing mast, and I ran over there to get it. And I had to do a water start with a small sail with a wing mast. And I kept drifting and drifting and drifting toward the starting line. And I actually did my water start right at the start line and sailed 30 knots on that run on my 4.6 little one. I was on like a 5.5 or something that I broke in the world record on the day before, but now I'm on the 4.6. I have never felt a faster blistering run in my life than that run. And I thought I had cracked 40 knots. It was way fast. It was like, this thing was just, whoo, whoo, whoo. It was kind of like getting in my Tesla and stepping on the gas and my head hits the seat. That's what this sail felt like. And I didn't get the world record at 40. I had to settle for 30. I said, well, put it back in my pocket. It's okay. And I
love that.
I understand why people are so addicted to speed, because it gives them a point of reference to discuss the times and the equipment, the technique. What are you doing? How smooth is your water? The fastest point of sail is the first guy going across the water when the wind switches from here to 135 degrees. The first guy across the surface of the water at 135 degrees will own the world record. The second guy will go a second slower. The third guy will go a second slower. It'll be over within seconds. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because when you go to 135 degree and you get the fastest point of sail for your equipment, it's only going to be a little while before the chop following you is going to be this big. And now you're going, and you're not going fast. But if you get the smooth water and you get that. So it's so scientific. So I would suggest the guys put all their, if they're at those speed contests, go a mile upwind and have something, GPS and angles of wind and wind speeds before you make your run, because it'll tell you what's coming.
Yeah.
Like the wind switch. I'm saying that you need to study when the wind's going to switch on these courses so that you can be the first one in the course. And if anybody's done a lot of speeding, they'll understand what I'm talking about, because when the course gets rough, you're not going to go fast.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you do to get like a VMAX. You just slingshot like You know what I mean? You try to find the biggest gust and you just bear off to that, more or less, that angle you're talking.
Wind blows like a cat paw, like this. Yeah. So when you're speeding, you've got to angle. You got to change the angle here, and then change the angle here, and change the angle here, and change the angle here as you're going through a gust. And usually a gust doesn't run more than 4 to 6 seconds. So this is what's happening for 4 to 6 seconds, and then you're going and looking for the next one, and then you're going this again. So when you find it, you bear off a little bit.
Well, that's I guess my question, because you seem to have a really good understanding of the conditions at that time in Weymouth. Did you realize that probably this is far from the fastest conditions that are made available somewhere around the world?
Oh, absolutely. It was kind of like surfing for G-Land now. Searching for G-Land. You know, where are the conditions so perfect that line up? But in order to do that, you needed a big support system to do it, because we had to get the Royal Yacht officials there, and you had to throw the orange in the water to see if it would drift and add or subtract from the record. You know, they used an orange because it would just be at the surface, and it would float in the current. So that's how they determined how to add or subtract to your time. So, but we needed to get flatter courses, so they started building the trenches, Port St. Louis or St. Marie de la Mer. And I mean, we had a lot of places. And of course, Fuerteventura always had the wind, but it was rolling. It wasn't consistent. Angles weren't good. And now, of course, they're in Africa, and it's probably some windier places that you guys haven't even found.
Probably
that might have better conditions. But I think if you really want to set the world record, go spend some money upwind and watch the flow of the wind with your electronics, and have somebody on a computer telling you when to take off. Because in order to improve, you got to improve your technology, because nature is going to do its thing when it wants to, and you got to have a jump on everybody. So anyway, that's the way I think. But I think if you made some kind of a fancy flexible wing mast that would twist off better.
We're finally getting to that point. Now the guys are like in the wind tunnel and testing different stuff. And so that's
try rebuild the wing mast. So
really interesting. Let's talk gear. Let's talk gear, because when I look at those clips from Weymouth, from across, whenever that event was happening for however many years, the amount of gimmicks, the amount of strange innovations that never really caught on, that maybe, were fast in certain conditions, but weren't really, all sorts of, like, you had a sail
wire going up to the top, down to my harness.
Yeah, down to the harness, and all this kind of, so many things, so many different shark fins, and
I know
3 sets of straps on the board, and booms that put you super far away from the sail to be upright, and all these things. What's the gimmickiest, or if that's even a word, what's the most gimmicky thing you can remember, and some of the biggest innovations, except for that wing?
Remember, I don't know if you saw it, but Jacob's Ladder was there with a number of kites, and then there's a guy on water skis, and then there were catamarans that were in the race too back then, and there were people. I had a lot of people come up to me and share their innovations. But, when you don't know what's going to go fast, or you're just learning, the world's your oyster. You can play with a lot of technology and trying to figure it out, and hopefully you're on the right one. But having good wind to sail in all the time tells you more about everything. In fact, I would test the wave sails on my speedboard, because I could feel disturbances easier on flat water at big speed than I could in the wave riding. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah.
I even turned some of the battens backwards on the head of the sail so I would get more twist on the sail. And I noticed I could point lower and hold the wind.
Yeah, which is basically nowadays kind of common knowledge, right?
Yeah, you want the wing to do this. Yeah. And so, even in my last speed sailing contest, I finally handmade my own camber inducers that were made out of Delrin, and I had them shaped exactly to the diameter of the mast, so they fit perfectly, so there was no bump out. They were perfectly aligned, and I was making a run that I thought I was already leading the contest at Florida that day, and I put on the small sail with all these cambers, and I had never ridden it before, and I couldn't get it to downhaul enough. It had too much, didn't have enough luff curve, so the head would open up, so the head was tight. And I can recall going and sailing along 10 feet from shore at full speed, kind of on a little bump of a wave, just running it, and then I had to get off of it. And as soon as I got off of it, my sail backwinded in the head, and I went backwards up like this, and I drug a mast tip down here, and then I cartwheeled and landed on my back, still hooked in, and I broke my mast in half, ripped my sail in half, accordion my boom all the way out, and I had pulled the bar through my harness webbing. The webbing was a little chafed, but it ripped the webbing, and the harness was off of me because I was still hooked in. Actually, I was on a butt harness, one of my speed seats. And I landed on my back, and I heard my whole back and head pop at one time. Just an explosion, because it had adjusted me. And I was only in this much water, so I rolled over on my hands and knees, and I can remember just sitting there and doing this to make sure I was okay with the hands, and then I moved my toes, and I said, "Oh, okay. I don't think I've broken anything." And I actually crawled on my hands and knees to the shore, holding my rig behind me. It was all a yard sail broken. Everything was busted, except the board was fine. And I pulled up on the beach and laid there for about 20 minutes until someone came and rescued me, because I had a splitting headache, and it lasted for 6 months. Oh, and that's the end of the book. And I'm going, what's next? I'm still laying there on the beach going, I think I want to go back and stop all this craziness. I was 39 then. So I want to get back, and I turn on all those contests with everybody speeding and watch with envy. It's still in my blood.
Yeah. That's what that I guess was my final question. What do you see now when you watch windsurfing, or you see windsurfing Maui or whatever? What do you say? Do you say just wow, like how far it's come, or do you see? Do you say like you told me with the wing mast, like these idiots, they should try a wing mast. That's gonna go quick.
They are not idiots, but they are definitely, they're essentially trying to build the wing mast out of their equipment, because you see they're getting harder front end surfaces.
Yeah.
Why don't you just get a carbon curve and put it up on the front of your mast and have it just maybe a half mast, but it's all supported, so you can use the foil. The back of the side of the sail facing you doesn't matter as much as what's on the front edge. And it's when the first wind touches the mast, that's why it's superior, because it really goes fast if it's hard. If you've just got a little bit of a flicker of a drop, I mean, you push in and you can push it, the wind's going to push it in and it's going to stall it. You don't see any IndyCar 500 cars with soft fronts. You don't see jets with soft fronts. What the heck? Make those surfaces harder on the front end. But when I watch windsurfing, I feel the stoke. It doesn't end. I haven't been doing it. I actually slipped and fell and landed on my leg. I twisted my ankle and landed on my leg, and I tore all 3 hamstring off my butt. So they had to cut a 6-inch hole in the back of my leg and reach in and pull my hamstring, all 3 hamstring out and trim them, and then drill on my pelvic bone and anchor each of the hamstring back on my pelvic bone. So needless to say, I'm not walking so well now, but I am walking. My balance is a little distorted because my sciatic nerve is disturbed, let's say. It's still recovering. But, you know, all that happened 2 weeks after I started writing the book. And I ended up working on the book with my ghostwriter at my house in my hospital bed in a wheelchair and a walker for the first 6 months. And it took about 9-10 months to write it. And so it was at a time when I was down, really down physically. I wasn't down emotionally. It doesn't matter what happens to you. It's still your attitude that brings you up or keeps you going.
Yeah.
We can all cry about our have-nots, but I think you just need to look forward at what we got and how great it is and what a great life we all live with this stoke of windsurfing and foiling and kiting and all the excitement. I'm so excited for the sport because, you know, the speed sailing is true to what Arnaud said. It is the center, and that's what everyone's going to be doing. And I kind of understand that, but sure is a lot of fun to get on a wave and feel the gravity of a wave and the excitement of acceleration and the rush of a close call or something, air time. I'm really impressed at how good all the sailors have gotten and the innovations that they continue to do, the double loops, you know, the triples, trying triples or whatever. Yeah, it's all out there. It's kind of like it all changed remember when the X Games started and you watched X Games and they were just motorcycles were doing loops and stuff, and all the sports from, you know, snowmobiling to jet skiing on X Games. I think that really transitioned everybody to get it, that they can do a lot more with their lives, you know, and it's nice to have a fulfillment beyond your family or with your family, but not just work, study, get ahead, you know, is, well, let's plan our days so we always include fun and good responsibility and family, but you can have fun with your whole family with this sport. So it's just a wonderful thing when I see the mom and dad with their rigs and the kids, and they're all just talking about how stoked they are. Oh, I don't know what else there is in life. Because money doesn't bring you that. The most beautiful house doesn't bring you that. The living on the ocean doesn't bring you that. But man, when you're participating with your friends and family in something that energizes everybody, that's really the exciting part of life. So
yeah,
I said, life needs more hamburger helper. You know, you put some seasoning on everything you do and keep on doing it. Laugh loud, laugh hard, tell lies, and keep sailing, you know.
I love that.
I always say, everybody exaggerates what they're talking about, right? You should have seen my wave. You should have seen how fast I was going. I blew up right at the finish, but I'm sure it was 40 knots, like me talking about it. You know, we all kind of throw our twist on life, but I think it's just great that we're all having fun. And I love what you guys are doing with your Windsurf.TV. I think it's great. You're promoting everybody. Yeah, everybody's
sharing that exact thing you're talking about. So
yeah, good platform. Congratulations for it. And I'm going to have to hook in and watch some more of it.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the book in my hands because I wrote down like 20 questions, 20 subjects, and maybe touched on 5 of them. So yeah. I can't wait for more of your super insightful storytelling. Racing with Aloha is available the 24th of August worldwide, Amazon, whatever, or racingwithaloha.com. So available on pre-order as we speak.
And thanks for listening to me.
Oh, but it's great, so insightful, and the amount of detail you remember from all these just days from a long life. It's great. It's something that I really feel like, inspiring. I should do more of the same. Just remember those little details.
Let's all promote passion, right? Let's get passionate and do it with a gusto and a excitement and a willingness to commit without fear. There's always going to be fear. Fucking pockets. So I heard that on a talk from Deepak Chopra. I think that he's talked about his fuck it pocket. And I thought, oh, here's a very spiritual guy talking about a fuck it pocket. I get it, because that's what we've always done, A lot of windsurfers can relate to that. It's kind of challenging what they do, and they just do it because they're willing to put it in their pocket. They're all their fears. So that's good. And I appreciate you guys, and thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you. Have a great time.
Share the aloha. Share the aloha. We're going to try to do some nonprofits over here, and a campaign called Share the Aloha, and more on that later, but we shall see how that works out. And I'm stoked to write a book. Now, my book is my story of my life and my first 40 years. It's not a tabletop copy that you can look at all the pictures. I do not have a single picture except the big wave on the cover, because I thought the story of the father, my dad, the other dad, I have stories about my dad that are insane, that I share in the book. And there's so many more stories with Barry Spanier and Mike Waltz and Arnaud and some of the legends in the sport. But they are, it's just a personal story. So I don't have the picture book that my writer wanted to put pictures in. And I said, no, it's not my story. Those are all finished. I want to just talk about my I want to talk my journey and let you get into my head with me and watch this and learn something for your life that could be superimposed to you from what I was experiencing. I had 3 or 4 friends call me and tell me that it actually brought them to tears.
I can believe that. After this interview, I can definitely believe that.
So I had one friend that said, okay, by 100 pages, at 50, he was crying. At 100, he is transforming his life. And it's 200 pages. And it starts out pretty solid. And you can see the start of it if you go to racingwithaloha.com and click on the website and put your email in. It'll send you Laird Hamilton's foreword and the first 10 pages to your inbox. So if you don't know if you want to read it, just read the first 10 pages and see if you got the stoke.
We encourage everybody to do that. Thank you so much, Fred. So inspiring, man.
My pleasure, and thank you for asking me to talk. All right.
Cheers, man.
Aloha.
There we go. Massive thanks to Fred Haywood for that podcast. Obviously, he's got his book out, so definitely take a look. If you like the podcast, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, leave us a comment below of who we should get on the podcast. Yes, Maciek is back. He's very busy at the moment. We do have a few lined up, and hopefully we can have some more and we can run through them, because I know they have been missed. If you like them and you want to support the channel, you can chip in some beers. I'll leave the links below, and we'll see you for the next one.